Wisconsin Eye's coverage of Campaign 2014 is being brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice supporting Wisconsin hospitals in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 election continues. We're interviewing Kelly Westlund. She's from Ashland. She's a Democratic candidate in the 7th Congressional District. Kelly, welcome to your first Wisconsin Eye interview.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Give us the short version of your bio and your qualifications, please.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a military family, moved around the country quite a bit, getting to know a lot about different communities and different cultures, different ways of life. And I came to Northern Wisconsin about 13 years ago now to earn a degree in conflict resolution from Northland College. So some skills sorely needed in Congress, I think. And upon graduating, I married a local and bought a house and ran for city council. So put down some roots, and now my whole family has relocated to Ashland, as a matter of fact. In my professional career, I have served as the executive director of the Alliance for Sustainability, which was a nonprofit organization doing work to help rural communities be more self-reliant in terms of local food, renewable energy, economic development, that sort of stuff. And then I went on to start my own consulting business, and I've spent the last 3 years helping family farmers build a strong local food system that will support their families for generations to come.
And you were on the Ashland City Council for how long?
I was there from 2011. I finished out my predecessor's term when he resigned, and then just up until this April, I didn't seek re-election because I'm running for Congress.
Well, I look forward to our interview because here's why. I caught your speech at the Democratic State Convention last weekend in the Dells. So I want to ask you why one of your first lines was you're talking to your fellow Democrats, you're talking to the hardcore, we're here to lie to each other, we screwed up. Put those in context, please.
Sure. I was talking about how oftentimes these sorts of events, these party-based getting together, right? They're pep rallies, exactly. And we're there to say, go team. And while I am a Democrat, absolutely, I'm a registered Democrat, I think that it's up to us as members to engage in ways that make our party something that we can be proud of as individuals. And the fact is, we have to start by taking responsibility for our shortcomings. We didn't excite and engage the base in 2010, and that gave an opening to the far right to be able to claim our government and push forward these extreme policies that aren't serving working people. So when I said we're here to lie to each other, I was talking about we're coming to pat each other on the back and to blame the other side for our problems, but really we have to step up. We have to take responsibility, and we have to make sure that we are inspiring and engaging people to turn out in 2014 so that we don't make the same mistake again.
Well, the delegates, you snapped their headbacks. you got their attention.
That was the goal.
Let's start talking issues in the primary, though. And if you're the winner of the primary, we'll invite you back for the general to talk more about specifically you're running against Congressman Duffy. But we can talk him. Well, let's talk about the mine. Is that the dominant environmental issue in the 7th?
Not just in the 7th. It seems to be, and not just this mine, but mining in general in Wisconsin is a really, really hot issue right now. But it is absolutely an issue that's near and dear to my heart. Obviously, it's on the border of Ashland and Iron County, and I served on the Ashland City Council. One of the things that I was able to do in my time on council was to push forward a resolution that opposed a number of the changes that were going to be going forward in the state. At the time, the law hadn't been passed. And that was one of the few things that actually made it through the Ashland City Council unanimously. The local opposition is very strong.
You don't support the mine?
I do not.
You think it'll ever open?
I don't imagine it's going to open in my lifetime. I think that, again, the local opposition is very strong. The folks up there feel as though they've been left out of the political process, that our voices weren't being heard when they were changing the laws to permit such a project. The other issue is that, yes, we need jobs, but the jobs that we see the most potential in, the places that are growing right now, are around sectors like agriculture and outdoor recreation, the fisheries, tourism. And those are all things that are put at risk if we allow this project to go forward.
Is the mine an issue in your primary? I've not yet had a chance to interview your opponent in the primary.
You know, I'm not entirely sure where my opponent stands on that issue. I just know that it's something that I've been very outspoken about.
Does Mr. Duffy support the mine? Has he indicated?
He does, as a matter of fact. He's voted at the federal level to further deregulate the mining industry, pointing to this project as a reason why they needed less regulation. And really, I think that a good representative would have at least approached the people who live there to find out how they feel, to approach the tribe that's directly affected. He didn't talk to the folks at Bad River.
Okay. There is a subject, or I'm sorry, there's a line on your campaign website that I want to ask you about, because it indicates, and this is my read, correct me if I'm wrong, that we should move, the subject is healthcare. Should we move to a single payer system?
I think that's the direction that we ultimately need to go.
Okay.
I think that it's going to take some time to get there. But really, even with healthcare reform, there's work to be done. Granted, we have more people now who are insured, who have insurance, or who have access to affordable health care than there were 10 years ago even.
Well, the president says we have more than 7 million have signed up under the Affordable Care Act. Excuse me.
No, you're fine. Absolutely. And we've also got students that now have it longer term. We've taken that control out of the hands of the insurance companies, which I think was a really important first step.
Okay.
However, there are still too many people who make too much to qualify for the assistance but still cannot afford to pay for health insurance. And it tends to be that target demographic that we were originally trying to get to enroll. The other thing is that in rural communities like where I live, if I go through the exchanges, there might be one provider as an option. If there were a public option, an option to buy into Medicare, then I think that that would really increase the cost competitiveness and give more people an opportunity to get the health care that they need.
Okay. As you know, Social Security and Medicare are going broke, albeit for a few years. How would you fix that?
I guess that first I would say that those who say that it's going bankrupt, that's more of a right-wing talking point to scare people into accepting these cuts to those earned benefits and those programs that we've decided as a country are important. Those are programs that keep people out of poverty, and I think that it's something that, for example, look at Social Security. Right now there's a $2.8 trillion surplus in Social Security. If I wanted to extend the solvency of that program, then I would eliminate the cap. Right now, you only pay on the first $117,000 per year, which means that the 900 richest people in this country stop paying Social Security tax after day 2 of the calendar year. So if we were all paying the same rate, then it's going to be solvent through at least 2050. As far as Medicare is concerned, the portion of that program that's in trouble is the hospital insurance. And that's solvent right now through 2026. So the same folks that are saying that it's bankrupt are the folks that are trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act. But the Affordable Care Act extended the solvency of Medicare by 9 years. And there are some other things that we can do for cost savings there. And the first place that I would start is by allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices. Because veterans can do it, the Walmart can do it, any other pharmacy can do it. Why is it that the taxpayer-funded Medicare program isn't able to negotiate prescription drug prices? It's wrong.
Well, hoping to get a chance to interview, I was taking pretty good notes from your convention speech. You said, quote, "We ought to raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires." Can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, this is the lowest that we've seen on average as far as what they actually pay in taxes in generations. For the most prosperous years in this country, for the most part, they were paying over 70%. I'm not saying that we need to go quite that high, but the fact is, these are folks who are capable of making more of a contribution. And it wouldn't affect their day-to-day quality of life, but it is something that has real impacts on everybody else. If you want the middle class to grow and succeed, then you need to make sure that you're making the investments that expand the opportunity for other people to succeed, and to make sure that it has more to do with merit and talent than on your family's net worth or your ability to exploit tax loopholes. It goes back to the Buffett rule. You know, when we have these folks that aren't being taxed on their capital gains as we are being taxed on our labor, then they're essentially accumulating that wealth. And that's not something that's going to help our economy. It's going to grow the gap between the very, very rich and everyone else.
Are my notes accurate? You said we'll put that money that's raised by additional taxes on millionaires and billionaires into public education and health care for all?
Right. That and investing in our infrastructure and making sure that we rebuild our country. You know, we have the means in this country to make sure that no person goes without affordable access to education, to healthcare, to housing, to transportation, any of these things, early childhood education. We have the means in this country to do good things and to make our country move forward in a dramatic way. We are lacking the political will to do it. That means that we have to change the people sitting at the table making those decisions.
Immigration is a huge issue pending before Congress. Those that are here illegally, should there be a path to citizenship, Kim?
I think so. I think that every case is different, But I know of stories that I've heard so far from folks. I know of somebody who came to this country married to a member of our U.S. military. She had a young child. That child came into this country as a 3-year-old, was never documented, has spent his entire life here, and now is seen as somebody who's an illegal alien. To me, this is somebody who has grown up in this country, who has been educated here, who has made a contribution to this country, who came over with a military step-parent. And yet we're going to say that that person doesn't deserve the opportunity to become a citizen of this country. And there are so many different examples where that same sort of thing happens. I think that we need to sit down and have a real conversation about a very, very complex issue.
What should she or he who are not here legally do to earn citizenship? What additional steps?
That's a great question.
Should they pay back taxes? Should they be required to do X, Y, Z? Any ideas?
I think that a lot of these things are still on the table. Really, we'd have to see what those situations, like what are the common themes once we get a lot of these folks to come out and talk about their situations. But right now, a lot of people that would otherwise say, here's the proposal, here are the things that we should do to move forward, aren't willing to talk about it because they risk the ramifications on them and their families.
You've seen the recent news stories, tens of thousands of children, 10, 12, 11, 13 from Guatemala and Honduras. They're showing up, they're crossing the borders to get to America, and they're now being housed in federal facilities. What should happen with them? Should they be sent back to the crime and gang-ridden neighborhoods that they fled?
See, that's a serious challenge, and it's frustrating to me when issues like this become so politicized that I think that what we need to do is take a step back and realize that these are individuals, and regardless of their circumstances and how they came here, people are people, and especially these children. They didn't do anything to harm us, to wrong us. They came here in search of a better life, which is how this country was formed in the first place. We need to look at them and say, are we as people okay with saying we're going to send you back into harm's way because you weren't born here, because you didn't file the right paperwork? I think that it's a challenging situation, but it's something where we need to have an honest conversation about our values, about how we are going to decide to treat other human beings.
What's your reaction to the ruling by Judge Crabb and other federal judges across the nation saying that laws against same-sex marriage are unconstitutional?
I think I'm elated. The feeling at convention on Friday when the ruling came down was just, there was so much optimism. And finally, again, it comes back to our values, our shared values. When that amendment was passed in Wisconsin in 2006, it was a very different time. And I think that we have to leave room for people's opinions to evolve, for folks to get to understand, again, what these situations mean to real people, that these policy decisions impact real lives. And that decision, I couldn't be more thrilled. I hope that Governor Walker and Mr. Van Hollen will not challenge the decision. I'm proud to say that I know that there are now, over 50 counties in Wisconsin where they've issued licenses to same-sex
49
couples.
or 50.
Yeah. The times are changing, and we're here to bear witness to it. It's pretty incredible.
You sound like you're waiting with anticipation for the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on that issue?
I am.
Okay. Are you one of the Democrats who say we should have a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United?
Yes.
Why? Because,
especially being in the position that I'm in now, I have seen firsthand the impacts that wealth has on our political process. And the more and more I pay attention to this, and the more I'm involved in it myself as a candidate, I see how the system is rigged to favor people with access to wealth. And in my mind, a democracy is for and by the people, that government should operate at the consent of the governed. And when government is operating at the direction of a few who have access to tremendous resources, that's not serving the majority of people. We've got to change it. We've got to change it so that so that voices count more than dollars.
Well, what about your own campaign? Are you going to have enough to get out your message, both in the primary and the general, if you win the primary?
Yeah, we've beat our goals for quarter one. We're working on quarter two. And one of the most gratifying things about this has been just the broad base of support that we've been able to build. The average contribution to my campaign is in the neighborhood of $20, which means at this point we've gotten, gosh, it's over 7,000 individual people that have made their contribution, that have joined Team Kelly. I have folks that send $1 a month just because they want to be a part of it, and that's really inspiring.
And Mr. Duffy's sitting on a campaign balance of how much?
It's over $1 million, I know, but
Okay.
he's been fundraising since the last election, and if you look at his top campaign funders, they're folks like Americans for Prosperity, Koch Industries, Wall Street, and other leadership PACs from Republican groups. It's not representative of the people in the district.
Congressman Obey represented that area for decades.
He did.
Has he endorsed you?
He has.
He has.
He has.
Is he going to play a large role in your campaign?
Well, he's offered to help out where he can, and I think in his words that he would go where he was more liked than he wasn't. But no, he's been supportive, and he's given me a lot of great advice. He's got an incredible, just encyclopedic knowledge of people throughout the district, and places that, people that I should talk to, and he's got a very nuanced understanding of the needs. So.
Question on foreign policy. What lessons about fighting international terrorism and limitations to U.S. foreign policy have we learned from the two wars in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Wow, that's quite a question. I guess with my background in conflict resolution and a military upbringing, when I consider war, to me it's troubling because we have a Congress now that has fewer people who have ever served in the military, who have family members who are in the military, and they're making decisions that send our troops into harm's way. I don't think that American servicemen and women should go into harm's way unless we have a damn good reason for it. And I don't think that we should ever send them into harm's way without the resources that they need to be safe and to be successful and to come home quickly. The fact that we have now had troops overseas for more than 10 years, on the credit card, mind you, is a serious problem, not just for those folks that were put in harm's way and the folks that died as, collateral damage, as we say. It's a serious problem for our country as a whole, because now we're having to face those consequences and make sure that we are meeting the needs of those returning service members and that we are rebuilding relationships abroad.
Did we have damn good reasons to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I'm not sure that we did.
Okay.
I was opposed to both.
Veterans who come back and their medical treatment. Have you had any in the 7th District say they've had to wait too long for treatment, or a veteran may have died by not getting that treatment? Is that an issue in the 7th? So
far, what I've heard from the veterans that I've reached out to and that have reached out to me, it's been that they are satisfied with the quality of care, that that the VA facilities here in northern Wisconsin have been very responsive, and that they're pleased with the level of service. I understand, though, that most of the problems have been in the southern part of the country, and folks here are glad to see that some of those concerns are being addressed now. We're actually having a roundtable discussion with veterans in Wausau tomorrow.
You are? Or
Friday, to make sure that we are hearing more about what their concerns are and their needs going forward.
The exchange of 5 Taliban terrorists for 1 U.S. soldier, was that a fair exchange?
I guess a couple of things that I would say to that. One is, it's my understanding that those 5 individuals were never actually charged with crimes. And in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. We may not like it, but that's the fact of our Constitution. Number 2 is that we make the promise to our servicemen and women that they will never be left behind. Period. We do not leave people behind. That's not us as a country. And so, say what you will, I think that it was the right decision to bring him home.
Your campaign website says you favor raising the minimum wage. How high and why?
Well, I think that 1010 is a good starting point, but I think that really it's got to be indexed to the cost of living. It's got to go higher than that, because these folks that are working for minimum wage, these are the people that are not putting their money, into Wall Street. They're immediately spending that money because they have to put food on the table, to put gas in the car, to care for their families. And we have a crisis in this country right now of people who aren't able to save for retirement, to pay for education, to make ends meet when they're working full time. And again, this comes back to the question of, even though we as a country agree that you should be able to work hard and play by the rules and be able to succeed and build a secure future for yourself and your family, we're lacking the political will to actually make it happen. And by not raising that minimum wage, we end up subsidizing companies like Walmart, where this handful of people at the very top are accumulating massive amounts of wealth while they're encouraging their employees to rely on the taxpayers for assistance to make sure that they're making ends meet. In effect, taxpayers are subsidizing Walmart to have bigger corporate profits.
Having some knowledge of the 7th Congressional District, is it fair to say it's still not recovered from the recession? How about logging and tourism? It just seems to be one of the, sorry to say it, one of the poorest districts in Wisconsin.
That's right.
Isn't it?
It is, and I think that's part of why people are getting so frustrated with having a congressman who's going to bat on behalf of his corporate campaign funders and his big money backers, as opposed to going to fight for the regular people of northern Wisconsin. When we're talking about unemployment insurance, for example, you know, that's something that I can relate to. My husband's a carpenter, and during the economic collapse and the crash of the housing market, we relied on earned benefits, on unemployment insurance to make sure that we could make ends meet in the meantime while he looked for work. And now that we have 1 in 3 people in this country who are looking for work are long-term unemployed, and Congress won't extend unemployment insurance, that means that those people don't get to participate in our economy at all. Meanwhile, Sean Duffy says that they're dragging their feet to go back to work. If Congress was more focused on creating jobs than finding new tax loopholes for billionaires, we might not have that problem. We might have more jobs to go around.
Well, one indicator of the economy in the 7th and in Ashland is your husband's work as a carpenter. Has his work recovered?
Yeah, he's actually back to work now in the Apostle Islands doing some work on the lighthouses. And that, as a matter of fact, coming full circle, was one of the last of the earmarks from Congressman Dave Obey's tenure in Congress.
Okay. I want to be sure I give you a chance. Is there any other major campaign theme that I haven't asked you about you want to highlight?
Well, I guess that I would say that it's important for people to understand that while it's frustrating and while we have every right to be cynical, the fact is you don't get to be at the table. Your voice isn't heard unless you show up. You can't say my vote doesn't count unless you're actually voting. You have to show up. You have to take ownership of your democracy. And this is our opportunity to show that citizen voices count more than campaign contributions, which means that we have got to be there on November 4th.
And finally, you have a primary opponent on August 12th. I want to give you a chance to talk about any differences with she or he.
Sure. I don't really know much about his campaign, though I do know that in the past he has run as a conservative Republican, somebody who's been supported by the Tea Party. So I guess if you're asking about differences, I can just say that I'm a progressive Democrat. And that's about as far as it needs to go for the primary.
Very good. Kelly Westlund of Ashland is a Democrat running in the 7th Congressional District. The primary is August 12th. Kelly, thanks for coming to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you very much.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
All right.